More than 37 million Ethiopians are going to the polls to elect their political leaders. Government officials hope the sixth national election will be the most open, fair, and competitive election the country had seen. Some politicians in the opposition argue otherwise. Marara Gudina of the OFC told the BBC that these elections would not deliver durable peace and stability. Likewise, the West and Western-based media are awash with portraying the election as something that doesn't warrant public attention. Would this election be a stepping stone to bring the much desired democratic dispensation in Ethiopia, or serve as a coronation to the ruling party only to seek national and international legitimacy in the name of election? Apart from conducting a credible election, in the eyes of Ethiopians and the international community, Ethiopia has to deal with other external challenges too. How can Ethiopia overcome those challenges is a fundamental question I'm going to raise to our today's guest, Dr. Brook Hailu. Dr. Brook teaches political science at North Carolina State, A&T, and other universities in the States. He is an expert in international journalism, foreign policy, and global representation. He has served for the Ethiopian Embassy in DC and was a permanent deputy delegate for Ethiopians to the UNESCO. He actively participates in numerous Ethiopian civic organizations, serving as executive member and diplomatic advisor. Thank you so much, Dr. Brook, for accepting my invitation.
Thank you, Ato Fasil, for having me. I appreciate your invitation. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, let me begin with this sixth national election. As I said in my introductory remarks, some view it as a major departure from past elections, and they think that this is the most competitive election Ethiopia had seen in the past. And but some think that it is business as usual, like what the Economist has said. Simply, it's a process of coronating Dr. Abiy. What's your view about this election? Do you think that it is really a departure from the past, or is it business as usual?
Thank you for this key question, and once again for the invitation. It is really a departure from the past. We Ethiopians have lived elections count, election goes of a very guided, guided, limited, and orchestrated the elections. But this time around, definitely, it's competitive, it's heated, and most of all that of Asil, it is civilized, cultured, and cultivated election. Because I, as an Ethiopian American, and as a professor of political science, and I teach comparative politics and electoral systems in different countries, Africa and Europe and America as well. Ethiopia is now really, when we analyze and evaluate the criteria for openness, transparency, use of the media by the ruling party and the opposition party, etc., and the engagement of civic organizations, lots of them are engaged, and the people at large, this is a very open, competitive election. So I beg to differ from these dark scenarios that is presented by the Western mass media, as you have pointed out, naming names even, that expecting that it's going to be once again, here we go again, the same old. No.
But what? Well, yeah, those critics raise some issues like major political actors who are now, some are in prison, others are not participating, especially in the Oromia region. That is one thing they mention. And the other is the country is currently engulfed with a lot of conflicts, and the election is not yet happening in different parts of Ethiopia, including Tigray and Oromia. So that's one thing they mention. And
very true, very true. Yes, you are right. Yes, there are pockets of instability in Ethiopia, in the regions that you have mentioned. I can even provide you with empirical evidence, for two basic reasons. One is for security reasons, and the other is for logistics reasons. In such regions like Somalia, it has been postponed. In Benshangul Gumuz, part of it has been postponed. In Harari, it has been postponed. And in Tigray, it is for security reasons, definitely, Tigray region. So for a combination of one of the two reasons, it has been postponed. But here is the deal, or here is the empirical evidence. Close to 38, 39 million Ethiopians are voting. When they vote, they are voting for the federal house, lower house, as well as for the regional parliamentary seats. Yes? When we take a percentage of, we have 547, for example, let me stay at the federal level, 547 seats. from the 547 seats, it is less than 100 that for security and logistic reasons, elections have been postponed to Pagme 1, that is late August. So 22 to 23% of the electoral areas of Ethiopia, election is not being held. It's going to be postponed. For Tigray, it takes another 1 or 2 years. It's extraordinary situations. But for the Somali, Harari, in a few weeks' time, we're going to have it. So 79% of Ethiopia is going to vote. And that is remarkable. Yes, we can do both. We can hold an election as well as we can do what? We can fight back, or we can try to contain social areas where there is social instability. So I beg to differ with all those who say that let's stop doing everything until each and every warada, until each and every kabale in Ethiopia is peaceful. Why? Because Ethiopia, the current change that we see in Ethiopia since the last 3 years has not been welcomed by internal and external enemies. So there are factors that we need to take account of. So the government should hold steadfast on its target and hold the election. We have already postponed the election for more than a year, and that brings into the question the legitimacy of the government. So I think it is very wise to hold it now. Of course, in life and in politics and election, everywhere there is a risk. But the point is, it seems, and it is a fact that in the majority areas of Ethiopia, we're going to have peaceful elections, and then we'll have a second round of elections in Pagme 1st or late August. So we can do both, I think. So I defer. Yeah.
What others say is that this election won't bring peace and stability in Ethiopia. It will further divide the political chasm among different political actors. That is what they fear. And do you hope that this election will bring some kind of stability, at least political stability, in the country? And shall we expect some kind of peace and stability in the foreseeable future?
That's a good question, and we have to be not idealists, hanging up in the cloud, but really down to earth, and we have to be realistic. We are in a state of change in Ethiopia, which is good for Ethiopia. Eventually, Ethiopia has to be a democratic country. We need to lay down the democratic infrastructures. We need to hold open and fair elections. That we have to do. All this is not easily, lightly accepted by certain forces. So a struggle is already going on between those who want to maintain and continue and solidify and consolidate the change, and those who like to draw us back to the good old ways that we know. That's an orchestrated, regimented kind of a society. So I'm confident that the election will be peaceful. We might have hiccups here and there, but as long as the government and the security forces and the people, by the way, the people are the most important. As long as they refuse to be used as tools for certain groups and elements, rather they choose the peaceful way of one man, one vote. I count in Ethiopia. I can make a difference in Ethiopia. And as long as the government can maintain peace throughout Ethiopia, we could have a peaceful, not only a peaceful election, which is historical, by the way, very historical. We have 47 parties, regional and national pan-Ethiopian parties. So far, it is peaceful. We have thousands of, we have about 9,000 candidates. We have about 2,000 women. By the way, when we come to gender, I'm a bit disappointed. We could have more candidates, women candidates. But the point is, they had airtime, they have debated in the media, they have debated in the radio, and also the government, for the first time in Ethiopian history, well, we measured the government by its action and by its words, had promised if it loses power, it's going to transfer power. The reins of government to the party or parties that win the election. That is unprecedented because anything goes. Who knows? The ruling party might lose 60, 50%. We'll never know. Elections are unpredictable. Or it might win again. Or it might not be the ruling government, the Prosperity Party might not be able to form.
What's some in the West, including the economy, says that the elections are fait accompli. It's known that the government will win. I mean, Abiy Ahmed's party will take the seats.
By the way, I'm as a former diplomat and as an academic, I should watch what I say, and especially words matter. For the likes of economics, magazine and the like, we should be very, very careful. For me, yes, it's historical and has a long history of, magazine, but whatever they say is not the Bible, as far as I'm concerned. Because repeatedly we have seen, especially when it comes to the crisis in North Ethiopia, Tigray region, the way it was by the Western media, the way it was reported is biased, one-sided, hearsay, and not objective. So I will not rely on that. I will take it as one source, but I will not take it as all source. I will also rely, by the way, on our domestic media, which, by the way, are now surviving. They have their own social media platforms, TVs. We have about 40 TV and radio stations in Ethiopia, private ones. They report and they are critical. They hammer the government left and right. They highly criticize justly and unjustly the government for its actions. So I would rather also rely on our own domestic media, because our own people know us better than the likes of you know what, the magazine that you named, and other people, those who are called, some guys in Norway, another in Holland, another in England. There are 3 or 4 of them who had made a fortune, who had made a way of living on the basis of analyzing Ethiopia in their own way. And some of these guys, I don't like to name names, have become a spearhead for the old order. They have, in their own way, had connections for the last 30 years. So I would rather rely on our own media rather than on foreign. I can use the foreign as a secondary source because they are not always 100% correct. That's how I see it. We should be very careful on what they write, because look at the CNN, for example. I have to name CNN. They don't have an office in Addis. They only have an office in Johannesburg and in Cairo, and maybe in Nairobi, I think. But they report on Ethiopia from 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 miles away. Or they send a stringer for 1 or 2 weeks, and that stringer comes up with his or her own attitude and outlook and perceptions about Ethiopia. They go around, by the way, the government allowed them to go to North Ethiopia even. But when it comes to an analysis of the way, how the substance and the content, how they reported it, it was really not very, very objective. So yes, we need the media. Yes, we should allow the foreign media to come in economic and all others, let them come in, let them observe the election as a domestic and international observers, let them hear them out. We'll read what they write, but what they write does not always hold true. It sometimes holds true, in others it doesn't. So we should be very, very careful of what we read and what we understand. And these coded words that is written between the lines. So that's how I see it. And the Western media have been disappointed. They have been disappointed in the expectation. Some of them have good connections with the past, as I have already said. So they have made their own dark scenarios that Ethiopia is going to explode, Ethiopia is going to collapse. But thank God, thanks to its children, not yet, and will not explode and will not implode from within. So you read such kinds of scenarios, like the one you quoted. I'm glad you brought it, saying that Ethiopia is bye-bye, the election is forgone, this and this is happening.
But Dr. Brook, yeah, this election was supposed to improve Ethiopia's international standing, but the European Union and Americans haven't sent their international election observers, fearing that the election won't be fair and free. And they didn't even give attention at all. Do you think that, I mean, this election within present international relations?
Yes, you see, you are a journalist, you know. We don't hold elections to make happy the Western world. America holds election like we did in November, a few months ago, not to make Ethiopia happy. Every country have got their own rules, regulations. In order to be a democratic society, an open society, you have to hold regular elections. And America does that, the British does that, the European Union, the 27-country European Union member country, they all do that. When they do that, by the way, do they ask observers to come to Brussels or to London or, well, UK is no longer a member, let's say to Paris or to Berlin to observe the German election or the French election? Do they observe us? No. But when it comes to developing countries, they request that they be observers. And by the way, as far as I know, Ethiopia has allowed the American government, as well as American think tank organizations, as well as European think tank organizations to come and to observe. Since you have raised the issue of the European Union, they did what? They withdrew. They withdrew. What was the point of difference between them and the Ethiopian government? 2 points. One is they wanted to have their own telephony, video uplink and downlink system. No sane country would allow to do that. That's illegal. Why do they do that? Second, they wanted to be the authority to declare the election. I mean, do Ethiopians go to Germany or to Europe and Brussels and declare that? I mean, this is absurd. Yes, they do give Ethiopia humanitarian aid. Yes, they do give us low interest grants. Thank you. That's good, because they do that. It is for a win-win situation. If they don't do that, European countries, the avalanche of people coming from the south would continue unabated. And in order developing countries to survive, like Africans in Arab countries, they have to help the African and Arab countries so that they prop up their economy base becomes so strong and vibrant, so that no Ethiopian will walk hundreds and thousands of miles via Libya or Yemen to go to Europe. In order to do that, I mean, both hands should work together, and for that, the European Union had done a good job. But to use that as a leverage of control, direct and indirect control in Ethiopia, is undemocratic. I highly criticize it. It is wanting to help in sincerity, to be sincere and help Ethiopia, fine. But to use that as a leverage to just twist this way or that way, I think would bring them into confrontation with the sovereignty of Ethiopia. Because given the nature of Ethiopia—
How do you explain, Dr. Brook? Yes, in the past, they have been observing Ethiopia's election. I think we had 5
absolutely
elections in the past, and they have been sending their observers. But this time, which Ethiopians think it is the most complete compared to the past one. How do you explain that?
That's absurd. It's a great question. They observed each and every orchestrated, it's just like a theater, where the ruling party had won the 5th, the 4th, the 3rd election as we go back, almost 100%, like North Korean type, you know. Sorry, again, to have to name a country, and 97, 96%, and they have legitimized it. You know, they have said, yes, it was a true one. And now at this moment, when Ethiopia needs them, at this moment in Ethiopian critical history, even the whole of Africa is watching, where if Ethiopia is, as a pluralistic society, as a multi-party system, that we can move forward and prove it to us, to ourselves, to our people, and to the rest of the world that we as Africans, although we are poor, can do it. They should have been here with us rather than boycott. So it's a shame. It is really a shame that they have withdrawn the participation. They were there and they legitimized that. By the way, here again, I don't want to name names. Certain circles in the State Department, in the American government, unfortunately, the Joe Biden administration, which we have supported as the Ethiopian diaspora wholeheartedly, that the Democratic Party will bring change. And we as Ethiopian Americans, strong constituents, we expect good things to come to Ethiopia: economic support, political support, moral support, etc. And we want democracy to be strengthened. What we have seen now is that some of these old folks who had said under the Obama administration that the election in Ethiopia, which was won literally 100% by the previous rebel group, is legitimate. When a journalist like you asked the good lady, how could she say that? She even openly laughed. Yes, she said it's a democratic free election, a democratic one. So that's the absurdity of it. At the moment when we needed them most, Ethiopians need America now in the Western world to observe. They have abandoned ship. And that, I think, historically, I think that's a black tent. It's a black tent. It's tenting of the good name of the great nation called America. America, which is a cradle of democracy. We expect much from America. America is the beacon of light. Yes, America has its own specific types of democracy. Ethiopia has its own specific values about democracy, blended with traditionality, modernity and traditionality, but still integrity should be there and mutual respect should be there. And it's a disrespect of the Ethiopian people and our election system by refusing or by walking away. That's how I see it.
Dr. Brook, Ethiopia's diplomatic relation right now, especially with the West, seems at its lowest level, I think, especially after the starting of the Tigray war, the Tigray crisis last November. And but there's this excessive interest on Ethiopia right now, and the West tries to put much pressure on the Ethiopian government. Is it something related to human rights and humanitarian things, or could there be some other factors why the West is so much interested and try to manage, I think, or interfere in Ethiopian
Great question. Affairs? A great question. It's both. You see, we as human beings, we want to live in an open society. And I also, as an Ethiopian American, aspire a democratic system to set foot in Ethiopia. Really, an open system where people live in freedom, expressing their views, freedom of the press, judicial review, independent media, all kinds of government being elected and not armed struggle, things like that. We want a peaceful, stable Ethiopia. And human rights should be respected. I'm for it, and literally all sane Ethiopians are for it. Respect for human rights. Okay, good. And the West have such values. The Western democratic system had such values as human rights. So both of us coincide. I mean, our interest, mutual interest goes together. But our differences and our problem begins when the values of human rights and the like sits in the back seat of the car, while in the front only the interest of some Western countries takes influence over human rights. Why are they interested? That's your question in Ethiopia. Ethiopia is a heavyweight country with 114 million. Every year, 2.5 million Ethiopians are born. We have 2.5 million Ethiopians to feed, to take care of, it means. Imagine every year. Secondly, Ethiopia is in a very strategic area of the world, the Horn of Africa, the Red Sea, the Bab el-Mandeb, Socotra, the Yemen, Suez Canal. Third, Ethiopia has lots of economic resources. Fourth, the military might of Ethiopia, highly disciplined, highly involved in the United Nations peacekeeping missions. Whenever there are Ethiopian troops, they make a difference. Disciplined, all this gives the West an ally, a strategic ally. Then, in this area, we have terrorism. We have chapters of Al-Qaeda, like in the Maghreb, in East Africa, we have that. We have also Al-Shabaab. So fighting terrorism brings Ethiopia and the Western world together. Small arms, illegal trades, illegal human trafficking. All these factors bring the two sides, Ethiopia and the Western world, in America especially, together. That's fine. But when one takes precedence over the other, that is wrong. For example, it is good to have mutual interest based on mutual respect. It's also good to respect Ethiopia as a sovereign country. When the line is passed by some Western countries to use Ethiopia, by the nose, and do this like a tool, then that's not knowing Ethiopia. That's not the Ethiopian culture. With all our independence values and everything, no Ethiopian regime likes that. So I think that is also one factor for this ill condition between the government of Prime Minister Abiy and the Western countries. Abiy had drawn the line compared to the past regimes of the last 30 years. He says, no, I will not land in your pocket. I need your help. We have mutual interest. We'll work together. But Ethiopian interest always comes first. I'll work with you after thoroughly analyzing the benefits of that joint action for Ethiopia and the West. So I think this kinds of behavior might have landed Abiy's government in trouble, as if he lacks as if he lacks discipline, or he lacks totally supporting the West. So that's how I see it, I think.
Actually, some people raise this, criticize the Ministry of Foreign Affairs not doing its job properly.
Okay.
To bring the West to the Ethiopian government.
That also.
Side.
Okay. I could say a few words.
As a diplomat,
Yes,
you
I can.
That kind of failure.
Yes, well, I have been in that portfolio for at least about a decade or less than a decade, and it was a pleasure to serve one country. It's part of a civic activity, really. It's a pleasure to serve one country. Of course, when you serve as a diplomat, you are like a soldier, not wearing a uniform. You have to propagate, you have to advance, you have to promote the government's policy, and no minus, no plus. You have to use your individual skills of negotiation skills, communication skills, language skills, and intellectual and professional background and experience would put you an extra mile ahead of others. Yes, diplomats are a must. I have heard many, many times criticism. Some criticize that Ethiopia being now hammered left and right by the Western media and by Western countries due to, among all the reasons, due to the lack of having effective and strong diplomatic response, as well as a strong diplomatic manpower. I can only speak now, since I left the ministry years ago, from outside and not from inside. I'll leave the primary critic for those who are insiders, who are still working. But as I recall, and as I observe as a professor of foreign policy and diplomacy, and as I expect as an Ethiopian American, well, yes, we have made progress in the diplomatic arena, but we still have got rooms we have got still rooms of improvement. For example, in the Arab world, we don't have enough diplomats who speak Arabic and who know the Arabic culture, the Arabic psychic and how they speak, how they talk. You have to, it's not only even speaking Arabic. Beyond speaking Arabic, you have to know the syntax. When you assign a diplomat in America, for example, English is, of course, everybody needs to speak good English, a good communicator, but you need to speak and understand the American rugged individualism, the American way of formulating policy, foreign policy, the American psychic, what makes an American three, what makes an American, excited, how do the politicians, senators, and representatives, you can go ahead by inviting them to a golf round or taking them to somewhere rather than straight going to the office. All this takes finesse. So our diplomatic corps, our body of diplomats, yes, they are getting modern training, but still we have got rooms of improvement. Compared to Emperor Haile Selassie's time, at the time, the group of diplomats were a few, but highly educated, highly sophisticated. During the Derg's time, it went down. In terms of quantity, it went up, but in terms of political activity, yes, we did have at the time seasoned ones and not seasoned ones. Under the EPRDF, yes, we had number of missions and embassies increased by leaps and bounds. Under Abiy's time, now we have 60 embassies and missions. Can you believe that in the world? In Brazil, Indonesia, Jakarta, in Seoul, South Korea, in Jamaica, literally throughout Africa, in the Middle East, in Europe, throughout in Europe. So that's an improvement. Now, as to naming of the right people at the right position, like in Stockholm, our embassy in Sweden, who speaks Swedish, or in Netherlands, who can speak Dutch, we have still a long way to go. Another factor is our culture, our shyness. We are not outgoing. I have to speak in very general terms. Yes, we do have a few diplomats who are sophisticated and tough and very active and as smooth as silk. But generally speaking, most of our culture itself, I think, has hurt us. We are shy, a bit introvert. I have to say it, I have to be brutally honest when I express this. Diplomacy does not work in such a way. You have to be a go-getter. You don't have to give up easily. You have to knock and knock and knock at the senator's door again and again. You don't just say, I went to senator's office so-and-so. What did he say? He said, I'll think about it. And then you wait for a reaction for 3 months. By that time, you'll have a Senate resolution like 97. Or right now, we have the House of Representatives resolution 455 out of Asil. It's still brewing. They are having in the kitchen, it's still brewing. And we have to do a lot, the diaspora with the diplomats. So we have made improvements, but still we have a long way to go. And I think Ethiopians have a sharp mind. If we could assign great people, young people, if we culture them, cultivate them, you know, and have a professional diplomatic school that we had, by the way, in Ethiopia. I've come to know about it by talking to the director, but we need to really deliver. We need to have the right courses, not only language, the right courses of diplomatic skills, everything. If we do that, I think just like we are now having, you know, this openness and strengthening of democracy, I see no reason why in 5 and 10 years' time we can transform the diplomatic body into a very seasoned one. I think everything is not lost, but we could.
Some also say that, as you said even earlier, that Ethiopia's geostrategic position have exposed it to be in the center of political tussle between the superpower America and the rising power China. And yes, in this situation, in this very difficult situation, very difficult time, what kind of foreign policy should Ethiopia entertain?
A great question. Another great question. Well, you see, we live in a world of the Cold War period was over in 1991. America leading the Western world and the old USSR, Eastern world. That is no more. Since 1991, we have a multipolar world. Now, it's crystal clear what we have is there is still America as a global power. On the other side, there is Russia. And then we have an emerging giant, and that's China. And then we have regional powers like Turkey and Iran in the western side of Asia and countries like that. What Ethiopia can do is the following. So far, we have been, especially since 1991, we are pro-America, we are pro-West. That is one arena. We can continue to be pro-West. But in your two earlier questions, as I've tried to explain, and as you have eloquently asked me, we have a rocky relationship between America and us right now. I believe it can be resolved. But if the push continues from America and the West, then it will come at a price, because that will be giving less chance to Ethiopia, so that Ethiopia will move, guess what? To the east. Definitely, definitely. So, you know, there are ways of mending these relations. It's not yet broken. The way I see it is, it's not yet broken. But American foreign policy makers, especially the current group who are in the State Department, in the National Security Council, they should thoroughly review their policy about Ethiopia. TPLF and the old group are gone. They should work with the current leadership in Ethiopia. They have no choice. The new guys who come to power after election and all that. So what I feel is that really the European Union and America, they should thoroughly review their foreign policy strategies regarding Ethiopia. Losing Ethiopia means losing a lot. Because no country, when it is pushed around, will just sit down, especially that's not the Ethiopian character. Ethiopians are not violent. Unless they push, they don't push back. In a very civilized way, in a very quiet way, they will do what they do if they are pushed around, and they don't just get into verbatim exchange. So just because Ethiopians are now quiet does not mean that they have accepted the push coming from the West and from America. So that should be really thoroughly reviewed. Otherwise, the loss will be great. Now, China, yes, we can get so many things from China. Low interest rates, technology, all the major projects that are done in Ethiopia and in the developing countries, Africa, Asia, Indonesia, everywhere are by the Chinese. They did deliver the goods. They built things. 3 years means 3 years, even before that. That's the biggest advantage. Technology, you know how we can learn from that. Yes, we have a strong, every year, the relationship between Ethiopia and China is growing. I teach a course in Ohio State University. It's called China in Africa. And Ethiopia is mutual, Ethiopia benefits and China will benefit. China will have a market, Ethiopia will have the technology and the project accomplishment. Okay, so on the economic front, Ethiopia is covered. Russia, here again, we do have a good relation with the Russians, military, strategic intelligence, hardware. If the West refuses to sell weapons to Ethiopia, the Russians will be there, definitely. They are interested in Ethiopia. They are our historical allies. Before the Great October Revolution, when in the Tsar time, Emperor Tsar's time, we have a lot of friends. So I think Ethiopia has choice to work with the West as well as with the East. If it's forced, then it will have to wait until the Joe Biden administration reassesses and comes back to its senses. And then we'll have, and I'm hopeful that that will happen. And the European Union as well, especially the last 2 weeks, I have seen the European Union mellowing down, sort of relaxing their push. Maybe they are coming to their senses. It is advisable that both of these actors really, much is at stake. I wish and I hope and pray they will evaluate their review relations with
some diplomats, Dr. Brook, some diplomats like EU's delegate to Ethiopia, the Finnish foreign minister.
Oh yeah,
Avestos, I think you've heard his latest remark or briefing to the European Union. He claimed that Ethiopian officials have told him that they will wipe out Tigrayans in 100 years.
Yeah.
Let's listen his briefing, and then I will come back to you too.
Maybe a word about what is the aim of Ethiopia. When I met the Ethiopian leadership in February, they really used this kind of language that they are going to destroy the Tigrayans, they are going to wipe out the Tigrayans for 100 years and so forth, which for me referred to very serious human rights atrocities and crimes as well. If you wipe out your national minority, what is it? You cannot destroy all the people, you cannot destroy all the population in Tigray, and I think that's very obvious that we have to react.
The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ethiopia has actually reacted to this with a lot of adjectives. It said it is very irresponsible, outrageous, undiplomatic, ludicrous, self-assured confidence, spoken in colonial mindset, self-righteous, and this kind of words or adjectives.
You said
to this speech. Is his briefing or witnessed something credible? Is that something we should, the Europeans should trust?
No, really, you have saved me the adjectives. Thank you for enlightening us. And by the way, the Ethiopian Ministry of Foreign Affairs made a very, very responsible, appropriate response, really. This guy, by the way, let's not forget about this guy, this official of EU. He was the one, if you recall, out of Arsil in your audience, that has refused to visit Tigray way back months ago. Instead, he went, as far as I recall, he went to the Sudan to focus on what, the 40,000 or so refugees to speak to them. So he is a guy, according to my subjective view, he has an axe to grind against Ethiopia. For what reason, I don't know. Maybe time will tell, something will come out. But given his portfolio, being a special representative, really he has brought to shame the foreign policy strategy, and he has damaged and tainted the European Union-Ethiopian relations. This person should be immediately withdrawn. And Ethiopia, by the way, has the right to demand for his immediate withdrawal of this guy, and of course, his replacement by another person who can be critical about Ethiopia, but a person who has integrity, a person who is objective and not partisan like this person. This person is totally on a whack, as we say in America. He is one-sided. Why? We don't know. He's one-sided. First and foremost, his mission should have been what? To listen to observe, to talk to both sides, yes? But he has already taken a stand. If he has already taken a stand against Ethiopia, then how could he be an impartial judge? How could he be an impartial representative of the EU for Ethiopia? And in that in that rather brief statements that he made, he speaks about so many things, like Tigray being destroyed. I mean, that is absurd. Tigray is the pillar of Ethiopia. Ethiopia is Tigray, Tigray is Ethiopia. Tigray is our brothers and sisters. If he's talking about a certain organization that he favors, that's another story. He can specifically say, I support this front organization. How on earth can you equate the Tigrayan people? No. The fight is between what? A rebel group and the federal government. The rebel group claims to represent the whole of Ethiopia. But we say what? They don't represent the whole of Tigray. I mean. They don't represent the whole of Tigray. Yes, there are by the thousands or by a few hundreds, there are people who support them. But the millions of Tigrayans for the last 30 years, they are under a hold by this organization. He doesn't even recognize, he doesn't even know the facts. That is the fact. That is the fact. So I think the European Union made a very, very big mistake to name this person, who I think is not knowledgeable. He might have a master's, he might have a PhD, I don't know. But he's not knowledgeable on what? Ethiopian politics, Ethiopian history, the Ethiopian political landscape, and also the Ethiopian culture, and then the political configuration in Ethiopia since 1991, 2018, what happened, the last 3 years, what's the current federal government is trying to do, what's the real cause of November 4th crisis in Ethiopia, who started what, who attacked whom, who attacked 200 military sites in the same hour, right before and right after midnight, to achieve what? All these things should have been analyzed. I don't think, by the way, this guy and the European Union, they have a mission in Addis Ababa. They have also an African desk in Brussels. I don't think they are short of advisors or people who are said to be knowledgeable about African politics, foreign politics on Ethiopia. But I think this person is that kind of a person who doesn't even use and utilize the knowledgeable experts to lend their advice, to share with him, what do you think? So I think the Ethiopian response is appropriate. It's an insult on Ethiopia and Ethiopians. And I think the Ethiopian government should push and ask the European Union to withdraw this person from this position to be replaced by another person. That's how I see it.
Well, thank you. Well, I'm finalizing my questions. Dr. Brook, there is also this another diplomatic challenge with the Ethiopian Grand Renaissance Dam. As we heard, the Arab League have recently released a statement backing Egypt and Sudan. And right now, the negotiation is stalled, and no one knows what's going to happen tomorrow, for sure. So, how do you see the Arab statement, very recently statement on Ethiopia? It is affinity lopsided, I think, in my view, statement in favor of Egypt and Sudan. Yeah. How impactful it will be?
It will not be impactful for the following reasons. First and foremost, just in 1 minute, a background to the whole scenario or the whole thing. I mean, the Egyptians are desperate, of course, and Sudan, the junior partner, sorry to use the word, but they are desperate. They want the United Nations, the US government, and the European Union, in addition to the African Union, to be part of the negotiation process that Ethiopia rightfully had opposed. They have run everywhere, and now it's time to run into the arms of the Arab League. The Arab League, its headquarters is in Cairo, and the Arab League is, throughout its existence since the late 40s, is under a strong pressure and weight of the Egyptians. And the communique, the two-day meeting, and I have observed the speeches, the interactions, and the last communique that came out of it are totally, I agree with you, Mr. Fasil, it's one-sided. They totally are negating the reality. They don't speak about Nile, Ethiopia having as a stakeholder of the Nile. They don't speak about based on mutual interest, the mutual use of the Nile by Ethiopia. They only speak about what? Egypt and the Sudan. They have also coded it in a very threatening way that we stand behind Egypt, etc. Mind you, all this, while there are outstanding issues that the Arab League has to work on, has failed to work on in the past. Look, Yemen, that's their number one job at the moment. Millions of Yemenis have been displaced. Millions are suffering and hundreds and thousands have died. This is the job of an Arab League country like Yemen is being wasted, and they have not made an impact. They have not made a difference. Syria, how about Syria? Another Arab League member, the same thing. What did they do in Somalia way back? The same thing. How about Palestine? The question of Palestine, Israel, at least bringing Israel and the Palestinians together, the same thing. So there are countless cases where the Arab League, in political analysis, you analyze and give them a report card, they have failed miserably. And now they have put in the Nile water issue. And I think that is the heavy hand and heavy work behind the scene of the Egyptian delegation or the Egyptian government. They have succeeded to come up with a communique, but it wouldn't have the slightest, I repeat, the slightest pressure or weight on Ethiopia. It will not affect Ethiopia.
But
that's how.
But some Arab League members like Egypt, Somalia, have actually voted, I think, or in this in favor of the Arab League's communique, as I said. And this will tell us something about our relation with our neighbors, immediate neighbors.
Yeah.
I think they were supposed to be, well, independent, I think, but now we see that they are siding with Egypt.
Very true.
And so, does it tell us something about its future relationship?
Yes, it tells us something. The decision does not have weight. It doesn't have weight. It's just a communication statement. It is very light. There are different levels in politics and political discourse of pressure. All the way it goes to sanctions, for example. They could have said, we members of the Arab League, we from this day onwards, we will refuse or we will scale down the supply of, say, oil to Ethiopia, for example. Do I make sense?
Yeah.
That is a very strong one. But this one is very light. It's just a statement. It's like making happy Egypt. It doesn't have teeth. It doesn't have weight. It's just a verbal expression of where they are. Whether Somalia votes or not, well, you have to line up sometimes. As in politics, we know. In politics, there are things that you sincerely believe in. There are things that you line up to make a bigger partner or another partner happy. So in that sense, I think they might line up here and there. But the current, let's say, Ethiopian-Somali relations or the current Djibouti-Ethiopian relations, I think will not be hampered because Djibouti has a lot of stake, to be affected if it does so otherwise. Do I make sense?
But how do you generally evaluate Ethiopia's position with this negotiation on the Grand Renaissance Dam? Ethiopia, until now with Egypt and the Sudan.
Very good.
Is it in the right position, or really do Egypt and Sudan have something? It's something concrete that we should listen to.
It is a right approach. It is a right approach. You see, even I consider the Ethiopian diplomatic offensive very smart. By the way, it goes back to your former questions about Ethiopian diplomats. If we want to see success and accolade and praise our diplomats, one of the success stories is what? Right there, the Nile issue. They made a big difference, our diplomats. So, Ethiopia diplomatically is on the offensive. We're on the defensive, now we're on the offensive. We have played it safe and in a very skilled way. In no instance has Ethiopia refused to sit down with Egypt and Sudan and negotiate. While Egypt had boycotted the last 7 sessions of the tripartite meetings, and also Sudan several times. See, Ethiopia's goodwill, Ethiopia has left the door open for a negotiated settlement. What Ethiopia has always said is what? It's 86% of the water flows from Ethiopia. We want to totally own it. We don't mind about you. We don't care about you. We'll do what we want. We could have done that, by the way. But that is what? That's a very unsophisticated, that would have been a very unsophisticated approach, where countless countries, leave alone America and the West, countless countries could have what? Condemned us if we do that. If we say might is right, we can't do that. But that's a very bad option. But the option that we are now following is a very strategically smart move in that the doors are open. We want Egypt to use the water, Sudan as well, and Ethiopia as well. We want to generate electricity. We don't intend to dam it and stop it. By the way, physically also, it's impossible to do that. You cannot contain water. It will overflow after a while. So this kinds of diplomatic initiative has borne fruits. That's why the diplomatic community in the world, even the United Nations, has become quieter, to be quiet. That's why, by the way, Russia and China are supporting us in the Security Council. Had we chosen, believe me, the first option, Russia, China, although they might sympathize with us, they would have dropped us. They would have gone for the sanctions, believe me. But since we are playing it safe, even Japan and other countries, they really appreciate, and African Union, African countries, I mean, read the statements that they bring out. They really appreciate Ethiopia going all the way, recognizing that Nile means life for the Egyptians and the Sudanese, that Ethiopia will never stop the flow of the Nile, that Ethiopia believes in mutual benefits, using the river together for the benefit of all. And also Ethiopia guaranteeing even the flow of to contain the water. Look, 5 to 7 years, no country will do that. We have purposely parceled out the amount of the cubic meter, the amount of water that we contain. Now it's 13.5, 13.8 billion cubic foot billion feet. We will retain in August. Last year, less than 5 billion. And then in the third year, and in order to become operational, we need at least 35 to 38 billion cubic foot. So I mean, we are in the right track. Literally, it should be commended. It should be commended by all countries, especially countries that share transborder rivers, to follow a strategy that is a win-all for everyone. And I think history will be on Ethiopia's side. I think world public opinion is on Ethiopian side, African public opinion, even the Arab public opinion will be on our side, as long as we present our case, which we are now doing. Our people who speak in Arabic, that was my passion 6 months ago. We need to have an Arabic program. Now we are establishing Arabic program, explaining our case to the Arab world. As long as we explain our case to the Egyptian people, to the Sudanese people, believe me, more and more the public opinion will be on our side. And this kind of narration, false narration that Ethiopia is out there to get them and to destroy Egypt and the Sudan will be bankrupted, and it will be totally ignored. And they will also appreciate our efforts. That's how I see it. Yeah.
From your, political experience, the Egyptians know that the Grand Renaissance Dam won't harm them because they have reserved stored enough water to cope up with some of the challenges that might have come during the filling process. But what exactly explains Egypt's fear?
Look,
what?
Sorry. Yes.
Is it something related to water, or is it something related to the geopolitics, or something like hegemonic relation with Ethiopia?
Fear. Fear. One is
fear.
Since the time of the pharaohs, pharaoh we say in Ethiopia, or pharaohs in English, pharaohs' time, their leaders at the time. Every rainy season, they measure the depth of the Nile, the water that flowed that particular year. Well, because their life depends on it, and we should recognize that. And we don't deny that, by the way. So one is fear, because without the Nile, life will be disrupted in China and in Egypt. The other is arrogance. Arrogance that Nile belongs to us. Not really looking at the picture 360 degrees. They don't even ask the question. If you read Egyptian literature, even political scientists, they don't give a due attention and merit to really explain where it even comes from. They just start from the Nile and Egypt. Nile is the life of Egypt. Yes, it is true, but they don't even look back where it comes from, who is using it, at what level. Even their existence is connected with another brotherly people called Ethiopians, whether one likes it or not, for centuries, for years, thousands of years. So third is ignorance. Arrogance, third is ignorance. I don't think the Egyptians are, especially in the school system, sorry for sounding judgmental, with all due apologies. I don't think adequate education is given, at least in elementary, middle, and high school, Egypt cannot live alone. It lives with other countries. And most of all, it lives with Ethiopia and the Sudanese. That should be explained. As long as we explain this, the fear later on will go away. This lack of confidence. And fourth is the unnecessary thing all added up that Ethiopians sort of are to be watched. And of course, in history, that at least 15 times we had wars with the Egyptians. And, you know, we always talk about the two dominant or the bigger ones like Gura and Gundit. They tried it, but they miserably failed. This military bravado that we see, military exercises, you know, Nile this, Nile that in the past weeks with the Sudanese. I mean, the military option, I mean, if they choose that, they will not succeed. They cannot destroy the dam. They might damage a little part of it. The thickness and everything is impossible. And also the consequence of that will not be, you know, it will not be good for all of us. Ethiopians, then you push Ethiopians to react. And when Ethiopians react, they have to react to survive. And I think that will not be good for the Sudanese and the Egyptians. So lack of understanding of the problematic, lack of understanding. And also, you know, believing in Ethiopia, believing in Ethiopia. And here again, you could explain it in a religious way, you know. Ethiopia is the first Muslim country, the first literally Christian country now, you know, Copts in Egypt, and then us. I mean, we have a lot of history together with us, you know. If they have this understanding, you know, coming together and saying that, yes, the Ethiopians also have the right to live. Yes, it's their resource. Let them use it to generate electricity. You know, this Renaissance Dam will propel Ethiopia for decades to come. For the economy, for industry, for everything. It will propel Ethiopia really to bring it to a middle income economy and even after and way above that. So for Ethiopia, much is at stake. You know that international financial institutions did not give us a penny. Why? Because they didn't want to get involved in these so-called controversies. And because of the Egyptian weight, the Egyptians refused that Ethiopia gets money. So, I mean, the Ethiopians are paying for it in blood and sweat and tears. It's too much at stake that Ethiopians will not abandon their dream of the launch of the GERD, which in 2 years, in a few months' time, 2 turbines, after a year and a half, after a year, another 2 turbines. I think by 2-3 years' time, all 12, 13 turbines will start operation and we'll get our 6,000 megawatts of electricity. I think that's how I see it.
Yeah, the final of the final questions. Here it is. The Sudanese have now come up with a new proposal. They claim that they are asking that a temporary agreement should be written or codified before the second filling process starts in July. Is that proposal something Ethiopia should consider, or should Ethiopia continue what she did in the past?
Yeah, great question. I do hope, and I know. I not only hope, I know that the Ethiopian government will reject it for the following reason. There's nothing called a temporary agreement. If you make an agreement, it should be an agreement on a permanent basis. First. Secondly, temporary, I mean, no, because you will be focusing on only one part of the whole issue. By focusing on only one little part of the whole intricate issue of how to utilize this mutual resource for Sudan, Ethiopia, and Egypt, Ethiopian government will not forego that. And it seems the Sudanese, I don't know, it's just, I wouldn't say it is silly. I wouldn't say it is childish, but the idea sounds and looks like it being naive. Naive as if with this naive idea, the Ethiopian government will accept it. I don't think the government will accept it because we in Ethiopia, we see the whole thing in its totality as it is. An agreement that will solve the problem for the decades and years to come. And not for just token amount saying that if you postpone this, still the problem is there. The issue is there. So I don't think that will solve the problem.
Thank you so much, Dr. Baruch, for this enlightening view. I mean, we have learned a lot, I think. On my part, especially, I have learned a lot from your deep knowledge, and you have explained it well. And so I appreciate you so much. Thank you. I hope to see you sometime in the future too.
Thank you for having me. And it has to be, you have to be appreciated for starting an English version of interviewing people. You know, it seems that we Ethiopians are only talking with each other in our own languages, whether Oromia or Amharinya or Tigrinya or what have you. We need to speak to the world. We know our case better, you know, but our case is an unknown quantity in the Middle East, especially in Egypt and the Sudan. We need to reach out and explain our case. So We should talk to each other, yes, but we should also start what?
Thank you so much.
English channels or English programs like what you are doing. It's a great initiative. Thanks for having me. And wish, by the way, I have to close with one. I wish success in the upcoming election, Monday election, June 21st. I congratulate Ethiopia, all Ethiopians of this achievement. And I do pray and hope the election will be peaceful and successful. And the long yearning of us to establish or to set up a democratic society in Ethiopia has to begin somewhere. This election might have some imperfections, but guess what? In 5 years' time, we're going to make it more perfect and perfect. That's how all countries start, and we have to start somewhere. And I wish all my compatriots and my people here and there for a successful election. And may God always protect Ethiopia. Thank you for the opportunity.
Appreciate it.